Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I am Rudy McLennan coming to you from Glasgow, Scotland. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. In his address to the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See, Pope Francis emphasised the threat of nuclear war. The Holy Father called for an immediate end to the conflict in Ukraine and for the end of the death penalty. He urged people to work together to create peace and strengthen democracy, which he said is waning in many nations due to heightened political and social polarisation. Pope Francis offered an assessment of the world's situation in a lengthy speech to the diplomats, which is customarily given at the start of the new year. He mentioned regions where conflicts and tensions are currently occurring around the world. Making reference to a third world war, the Holy Father added that conflicts only directly affect some parts of the planet, but indirectly affect all of humanity. Pope Francis's remarks to diplomats have been seen by Ambassador Joseph Donnelly, the US ambassador to the Holy See, as a call to action to collaborate in advancing human rights and safeguarding the environment. The ambassador shared his thoughts following his time in the Vatican in an interview with Vatican News. When asked what struck him most about Pope Francis's address to the diplomatic corps, the ambassador said that the hardest year for peace had just passed, and everyone was hopeful that they could all contribute to peace in the following year. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the ambassador said, "We wish for the end of the conflict, the establishment of peace, and the opportunity for everyone to experience God's grace." 10 of Benedict XVI's most significant speeches during his pontificate have been collected in one book. The book, entitled "With God You Are Never Alone," was released on the 9th of January, just over a week after the death of the Pope Emeritus. Father Federico Lombardi, the head of the Vatican Joseph Ratzinger Benedict XVI Foundation and former director of Vatican Radio, Vatican TV, and the Holy See Press Office, wrote the preface to the book. The book offers only a small selection of Benedict's most important speeches, spanning from his historic address to the Roman Curia in December in 2005 to his final general audience on February the 27th in 2013, the day after he announced his resignation. However, the book omits any of his writings or documents that are considered to be magisterial. In Warsaw, a Mass of Thanksgiving commemorating Pope Benedict XVI's life and pontificate was offered. Salvatore Pennacchio, the Apostolic Nuncio to Poland, led the ceremony, in which around 50 bishops from different parts of the country took part. Archbishop Stanisław Gadecki, president of the Polish Bishops' Conference, said in his homily that Pope Benedict XVI was one of the most distinguished theologians of the 20th century and a magnificent testimony to the faith. The nuncio himself said that as a priest, theologian, and later as the leader of the Catholic Church, Benedict XVI was a collaborator of truth and a master of catechesis and liturgy. Meanwhile, the diocesan community of Rome continues to pray for Pope Emeritus Benedict. Holy Mass will be held for the Pope Emeritus on Thursday, January the 12th at 7 p.m. in the Basilica of St. John Lateran, and that Mass will be presided over by the Cardinal Vicar of Rome, Angelo De Donatis. A mob of right-wing protesters stormed Brazil's Congress, Supreme Court and Presidential Palace on Sunday. The Brazilian Bishops' Conference responded by issuing a statement requesting an immediate halt of criminal attacks and requesting that those responsible be held accountable. The bishops expressed their shock at the events in Brasilia on Twitter. They said that these attacks must be immediately stopped and that democracy itself must be safeguarded. As many as 3,000 demonstrators who back former President Jair Bolsonaro were involved in the incident. A full-scale investigation into the attacks is now underway. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who was in Sao Paulo at the time of the storming, insisted that the perpetrators will be punished. Around 1,500 supporters of the former president have been detained after the ransacking on Sunday. During his 4-hour visit to the US-Mexico border on Sunday, President Joe Biden discussed the impact of his administration's recent crackdown on immigration with Bishop Mark Seitz of the Diocese of El Paso in Texas. Seitz, who is the chairman of the USCCB Committee on Migration, said he encouraged the president to take into account how the new policy would affect people who were applying for asylum in the country during a press conference after the visit. Before visiting El Paso, Mr. Biden stated on Thursday that the United States would increase border security and start turning away illegal border migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua and Haiti. New rules would, however, also allow up to 30,000 people from these countries to enter the United States legally each month. Migrants would be able to come for 2 years and receive work authorization, provided they have an eligible sponsor and can pass vetting and background checks. Bishop Sides' message to Mr. Biden was to call attention to the humanitarian side of the crisis. On the afternoon of January the 8th, Jill Biden, the wife of Joe Biden and First Lady of the United States, visited the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. The wife of Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, Beatriz Gutiérrez Müller, accompanied Jill Biden during her tour of the Basilica. The First Lady flew into the city a few hours before the President of the US arrived in Mexico City himself. She was accompanied by the rector as she toured the Marian Shrine. According to the local archdiocese, the tour lasted approximately 20 minutes. The Ghanaian President has urged Catholic clergy to promote nation-building, cohesiveness and solidarity among the people in the West African country. In his speech at the 28th National and 16th Biennial Congress of the National Union of Ghana Catholic Diocesan Priests Association, President Nana Akufo-Addo acknowledged the Church's contribution to Ghana's political and socio-economic development and the role that the Catholic Church plays in society. He also urged clergy to preach about the need for solidarity, a basic pillar of Catholic social doctrine which emphasises firm and persevering commitment to the common good. He also urged the public to support the clergy. The Mor Ephraim Syriac Ancient Orthodox Church, the first ever erected in the contemporary Republic of Turkey, is almost finished and is scheduled to open in 2 months. That is according to the Istanbul Syriac Ancient Foundation. At a ceremony in Istanbul's Yeşilköy neighbourhood in February 2019, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan laid the church's foundation. Said Hüseyin, President of the Syriac Kadim Foundation, said that the estimated cost to build the church is around €4 million. Anadolu Agency reported that when completed, the church would serve about 17,000 Syriac Orthodox believers living in Istanbul. The civil war in Syria is largely behind the increase of the Syriac Christian minority in Turkey. For the third time, the Portuguese president has blocked the introduction of euthanasia by referring it to the Constitutional Court. Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, who attended the funeral of Pope Benedict XVI, has used different mechanisms to block the proposals 3 times. He submitted the text of the law to the Constitutional Court to see if it fits with the Portuguese constitution. The president said that if he had simply vetoed it, it would have ended up being passed again and introduced into law. 10 members of the rural missionaries of the Philippines, including 2 religious sisters, were cleared of perjury charges by a court in Manila on January the 9th. Missionary of the Sisters of Mary, Sister Emma Supin, and Good Shepherd Sister Elenita Belardo were among the human rights activists whose perjury charges were thrown out by the court in Quezon City on the grounds of reasonable doubt. Former President Rodrigo Duterte's National Security Advisor, Jimenez Esperon, filed a case against the nuns in 2019 for allegedly lying under oath that their group was a non-profit organisation. The religious sisters said the charges were malicious and intended to harass those who championed the cause of the poor. Human rights advocates protested outside the Quezon City Hall of Justice while the verdict was being read. The sisters prayed together to thank God for the acquittal and to stop what they termed state attacks. More than 30 people have been kidnapped from a train station in southern Nigeria's Edo state by gunmen armed with AK-47 rifles. The assault is the most recent illustration of the rising insecurity that has affected almost every area of Africa's most populous nation, providing a serious concern for the government ahead of a presidential election in February. Police said that armed herdsmen had attacked Tomikimi Station as passengers awaited a train to Wari, an oil hub in nearby Delta State. The station is over 100 kilometres northeast of the state capital and close to the border with Anambra State. The Federal Transportation Ministry referred to the kidnappings as utterly barbaric, and the Nigerian Railway Corporation has shut down the station until further notice. According to Americans United for Life, a pro-life public advocacy group, Arkansas has been recognized as the most pro-life state in the United States for the 3rd consecutive year. States are ranked yearly according to how well they are promoting a pro-life culture. There has been a lot of movement among the states as a result of the reversal of Roe versus Wade. In Arkansas today, state law protects almost all unborn children from the moment of conception. The only exception is when the mother's life is in danger. Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Indiana and Mississippi were the top 5 most pro-life states in the United States of America. The Life List, as it is referred to by Americans United for Life, considers life protections for the preborn, the elderly and those that are terminally ill. It is a comprehensive look at laws that protect life from conception to natural death. Sunday saw a march in France honouring an Iranian Kurdish man who committed suicide out of desperation after Iran's widespread demonstrations. According to French police, around 1,000 people attended the rally for Mohammed Muradi. They marched through Lyon, the city where Muradi, who was 38, committed suicide in December by drowning in the Rhone River. Before his passing, Muradi made recordings in Farsi and in French in which he lambasted Iran's leadership and urged Western nations to stand with him in opposition. Along with Rome and London, large protests were held in support of the Iranian protest movement. The protests in Iran began in the middle of September over the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old woman who died after being arrested by Iran's morality police for allegedly violating the Islamic Republic's strict dress code. Women have played a leading role in the protests, with many publicly removing the compulsory Islamic headscarf known as the hijab. And those are your latest headlines. Do join us again tomorrow for more. And do remember, you can always visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.